Hey, I want to take a little time today to answer a question that was sent to me from a viewer who was thinking about buying a new Smith & Wesson revolver. He said that he was looking at a specific revolver and he saw that it had DX front sights, DX interchangeable front sights. And after seeing that, he asked me if he buys that gun, does he have to buy special sights if he wants to replace the factory just red notch sight? And I let him know, yes, you do. And he asked me, well, what's the difference between the standard sights on Smith & Wessons and the new DX interchangeable sights? And how do you change out the new ones? Well, I thought I'd make a video real quick to answer all those questions. If you look at the more traditional style front sight on a Smith & Wesson, like here on my 329 PD, it's held in place by a pin right there. You can see the pin. If you look at it up close right there, you can see it really well. Well, that's the only thing that really holds the sight in. And to take this sight off and change it, what I would have to do is punch out that sight, remove this sight, put another sight in that has a little rounded bottom on it, which I'll show you here in a second, and then I would have to re-drill it. Because that little rounded bottom we just mentioned on the new sight is not pre-drilled, because those holes are not always drilled in the same place on a Smith & Wesson. So the sights come undrilled or not drilled, I don't know how you say that. And then you actually have to re-drill it with a special size bit and then put the pin back in to hold it in place. This is one of the old style sights right here, and you can see what it looks like. And here's one I took out of an old Smith & Wesson. As you can see, it's been drilled right there. This one's actually come out of a gun. It's actually been drilled and put in place. That little hole wouldn't be there if this was a new sight. So as I said, that was kind of an ordeal. You have to push the pin out, take out the old sight, put in the new sight, then you have to drill it, and you have to be very careful because there's not a lot of extra real estate above the drilled spot right there. And you got to make sure you have the right size drill bit. You got to make sure you get it straight through. It's just kind of a hassle. The old sights were a little bit of a pain in the ass to change. I often put off changing them for very long periods of time because I just didn't want to have to deal with it. Now, if you look at one of the new DX style sights, you can notice it's a lot different. That bottom shape there is a lot different. It's not just a little like semicircle or partial circle. It is kind of a wedge shape, and there's a reason for that. Before we get into that reason, I just want to let you see them here side by side so you can see the big difference. Now, if you actually have a gun that has the DX front sight on it, you can usually tell. The little spot right there, the little pin, is drilled a little further up. That's a way you can tell if it has a DX sight. Or you can just look at the end of the barrel and you'll see there's a big hole up there. That's a sure sign that you have a DX front sight. That hole right there makes this a whole lot easier to change. The reason that hole is up there is they've drilled a little channel all the way back through here, and there's a spring back here that sandwiches that little wedge part of the sight between the pin and the spring. This sight is actually being held in by not just the pin up here, but by a spring at the back that locks into it. And the way you get this out is you just push back on it all the way and then pull up on it. And it comes right out. So much easier than the old sights. And to put the new sight back in, you see that little wedged bottom right there, you just hook the back side of that wedge onto that little spring piece and then pull it back and push it down. Exactly the opposite of the way you took it out. You just put it in there in front of the little spring. You push the little spring all the way back, drop the sight into place, let it pop back forward, and you've replaced your sight. That's literally all it took. Changing these new DX style front sights is literally a 5 to 10 second affair. That's all it takes to make the change. And once it's on there, it's good and solid. It's not going anywhere unless you take it off the way you took off the other one. So there you have it. There's the difference between the old front sight and the new front sight. The new front sight is just so much easier to change. I know a lot of people don't like that little hole in the front, but you know what? It doesn't bother me at all, especially since I know why it's there, and it makes changing that front sight so freaking easy. I wish every gun I owned had a front sight that changed that easily, but unfortunately they don't. So I think this is a huge improvement as far as Smith & Wesson's front sights are concerned, and I hope it's not long until they do that kind of sight on every one of their revolvers.